Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're digging into some sources you've provided that give a truly unique vantage point.
A really volatile period in modern hip-hop history.
Exactly. And our mission here is to get past the headlines, to really understand the intense and chaotic world surrounding Max B.
And we're doing that mainly through this one key source, right? The unfiltered testimony of his co-defendant, Gina Conway.
That's the one.
Yeah, and this source material is, it's everything here. It's this extensive interview transcript, and it gives us these incredibly intimate details.
About a relationship that was just...
Built on sand, and then you throw in the professional tensions that were just reaching a breaking point.
So we're not just summarizing events.
No. We're synthesizing how this incredible instability, private and public all converge to create the backdrop for, everything that happened next.
Absolutely. So for you, the learner, this is your shortcut to understanding that whole period. We're connecting the dots.
The shocking personal stuff and the high-stakes music industry friction.
It's an immersion into a world where everything felt like a huge success and, at the same time, completely out of control.
A total paradox.
Okay, let's unpack this. So let's start in New York.
Yeah.
This is right after Conway moved there to be with Max B.
Right.
And immediately, the sources, they paint this picture of just severe disruption.
Yeah, she doesn't call it passionate or romantic. The word she uses is tumultuous.
Pretty tumultuous, yeah.
Yeah.
She expands on that. She calls it crazy, says there was a lot of fighting.
But she does mention there were fun moments, too. It wasn't all one thing.
True, but the dominant feeling you get is conflict.
What really stands out to me, though, from the transcript is the culture shock.
Oh, absolutely.
At the time, she was dancing at Sin City in the Bronx, so she's not totally new to nightlife, but
This was different.
completely different. The sources stressed that her life with Max B was an existence she was, and I'm quoting, not used to living.
And it wasn't a gradual shift, was it? It was immediate.
Immediate. A rapid immersion into things she was just not used to being around.
It's one thing to navigate an industry, even a tough one. It's another to be thrown into a personal life with, no rules.
Precisely. And that lack of foundation is really the key context for everything that comes next in the source material.
Because it details this systematic introduction to a new, much higher risk world.
Suggesting a pattern of control was established, pretty much the moment she got there.
And the sources get very specific here. It takes a hard turn.
It does.
Starts with substances. She details being introduced to drugs, specifically naming ecstasy.
Right. And she says, I never took ecstasy before.
So this wasn't her experimenting. This was her partner introducing her to a whole new set of risks.
And that kind of boundary crossing, it went beyond just substance use. It went right into the sexual dynamic of their relationship.
Yeah, she says Max B introduced her to a whole sexual lifestyle.
A lifestyle she labels unconventional.
And that's the first real signal that this partnership was operating way outside any kind of, recognizable norm.
Or mutual respect.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Because the sources don't just leave it at unconventional, they spell it out.
They give specific example.
Yeah. Sex with people that we didn't know, orgies, and random types of sex.
The inclusion of strangers, other women, it just underscores how chaotic and far removed from her old life this was.
The sources are, they're clearly illustrating a dynamic where her personal boundaries were just being systematically worn down.
And she was constantly being put in these high-risk situations. But this pattern of exposure and control, it reaches its darkest point in the material.
When she discusses the economic exploitation,
Exactly.
the account pivots, and very sharply, to prostitution. Conway states directly that Max B introduced her to it.
And the mechanics of it, as she describes them, are really important.
Right. She's clear she wasn't doing this on her own or all the time. Instead, she says he set it up.
And that he, quote, sold me to people before.
Wow.
And the sources confirm this happened specifically 2 times. It's a devastating piece of testimony.
And what gives it so much weight is her own reflection on it, captured in the transcript.
Her reflection now, looking back.
Yeah. She admits, in hindsight, that it is prostitution technically. And then she says that looking back on it bothers me a lot.
That admission of regret, of discomfort, it just adds this incredible gravity to it.
So if we synthesize this part of the source material, what we're looking at is a relationship with an extreme power imbalance.
What else can you call it? When you look at the totality, the drugs, the forced unconventional lifestyle, and then actually setting her up.
And selling her.
It shows a partner who was actively commodifying and exploiting the other person. This imbalance of power it's just a vital piece of the whole puzzle.
You could argue it's the most explosive detail in the entire transcript.
It's certainly up there.
And it sets up this really critical link, right?
Yeah.
Because if his personal life is built on exploitation and financial strain,
That instability isn't happening in a vacuum.
no. He was dealing with a very similar dynamic in his professional life at the exact same time.
Which must have just amplified all the frustration.
But before we get to the music industry side, there's another piece of his inner circle we need to look at.
His stepbrother, Pooh Sims.
Pooh Sims, who ends up becoming their co-defendant.
What's so striking is the distance between Conway and Sims right up until the incident. She says she only met him 2 to 3 times. Total.
And get this, they never even spoke.
Never spoke, and yet she still had this impression of him. She called him a scary guy.
It's a very unusual dynamic for people who are supposed to be connected by family.
It is, and the sources give us this one really specific, really strange anecdote that just clarifies how much of a non-relationship it was.
The story of their first meeting.
Yeah, it's fascinating. She says Pooh Sims gets in the back of her car, doesn't say a word, and drops his cigarette ashes right in the seat.
Just intentionally disrespectful.
Completely. She said he didn't acknowledge her when she was introduced, refused to speak, and then just got out. It was a calculated act of silence and disrespect.
So the reason the source includes that detail, the ashes, the silence, it's to paint a picture of someone who had zero regard for her.
And who was potentially volatile, even around his own family.
So what's the takeaway there?
I think it illustrates Max B's inability to control or even stabilize his own immediate environment. He's in this volatile relationship, and the people he's bringing around, even family, are characterized by tension and disrespect.
It's like the entire atmosphere around him was dysfunctional.
A perfect storm where any sense of control was just gone.
And this raises a really important question for you, the listener. When you have a group of people who are basically strangers to each other, defined by disrespect.
And then they're thrown together by a criminal circumstance.
Right. How does that pre-existing tension and volatility shape the context of everything that leads up to their shared legal fate?
That's a huge question.
Okay, now let's pivot to the professional side of things. This personal chaos was running parallel to a massive conflict between Max B and Jim Jones.
Right. And for context, they were working closely together in Dipset the Diplomats, a huge dominant force in New York hip-hop at the time.
The pivot point, according to the sources, was one song, Ballin.
A massive song.
Huge. Conway says it became the biggest song really out of Dipset at that time. And the key detail that lights the fuse.
Is that Max B allegedly wrote that song for Jim Jones?
And its success just amplified a friction that was already there.
Exactly. The sources confirm the tension between Jim and Max had started before Ballin, but when that song blew up commercially, it seems to have just solidified the divide.
And the core of the conflict was, what? Paperwork.
Weird paperwork is the phrase she uses. Weird paperwork about the song and fundamentally about how Max B was getting paid. Or not getting paid.
Let's just clarify for the listener what weird paperwork in the music industry usually means.
Sure.
When a song becomes a hit, issues pop up around publishing splits, royalties, who owns the master recording.
And if the paperwork is weird, it almost always means the deal heavily favors the label or the established artist, in this case, Jim Jones.
Leaving the writer, Max B, vulnerable.
Exactly. And the sources really hammer this home. She details that even though he created what was arguably the group's biggest commercial hit,
he was getting paid little to nothing for it.
Little to nothing.
That's the emotional gut punch, isn't it? He's driving massive success, making money for everyone else, but seeing almost none of it himself.
The professional environment was basically just a mirror of his personal life. It was the same exploitative dynamic.
So using intellectual property instead of, personal vulnerability.
And it creates this just unbearable psychological state. You have massive public fame running headlong into private humiliation and financial strain. It confirms the whole pattern.
A lack of control over his own output, whether it's creative or relational.
And the sense of just being perpetually undervalued and used by everyone around him.
So when we put it all together, what does it all mean? What do the sources tell us?
They tell us he was under these twin pressures, an unsustainable, dangerous personal life.
Characterized by coercion and strife.
Running parallel to this underpaid, deeply frustrating professional life where his creative work was being exploited.
These twin exploitations created this incredibly volatile, unsustainable backdrop for everything that happened.
That is the ultimate synthesis the sources give us, whether we're looking at the shocking private details of control.
Or the public fights over weird paperwork.
And getting little to nothing, yeah. The material just paints this vivid picture of extreme pervasive instability.
It really shows how quickly commercial success and just devastating personal turmoil can merge together.
Creating a reality where the foundation under your feet is always crumbling, no matter how successful you look on the surface.
It's a profound and frankly a jarring insight. It shows how fame can be so fragile when it's built on such troubled ground.
Right.
The sources really force you to confront this idea that writing the biggest song in your crew's history wasn't a path to stability or dignity for him.
It was just another way to be exploited.
Another avenue for documented exploitation and financial strain.
Yeah, it's the stark realization that writing the biggest hit of your career and enduring this deeply abusive, volatile pressure, they weren't separate events.
They were happening at the same time.
The duality is just immense.
So we're left asking this question. Can genuine creative success ever really flourish on a foundation of such extreme, documented instability?
And what does that tension between public fame and a foundation of total collapse ultimately cost the people involved?
How does that internal conflict inevitably shape the public narrative of the artists that we all follow?
A lot to think about there.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the source material. We'll see you next time.